Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about overall timing, initial timing, and even hopefully getting this thing to start at the end of the episode. This has been my fresh rebuild. If you haven't been watching my series, I just rebuilt this engine for my 68850, and we're going to try and get it to fire today, but first we're going to talk about timing and how to set that. So let me get you guys set up, get you a couple examples so we can cover some basics, and then we'll get into the engine bay and get it taken care of. Alright, so the first thing about timing is if you've done a fresh rebuild like me, then you'll have gone through the timing chain. This is my old one. I have a new one in there, but it's the exact same process underneath the timing cover in the car. So what you want to look for on these is there's an actual mark. So I don't know how well it's going to show up, but you see that line, and it has to match up with that dot. Those are your timing marks. This is on your crankshaft, and this is on your camshaft. It only orients one way because of the alignment holes here and the key shaft on here. So whenever you go to put this on, make sure those are lined up, and that's how you know you're on time here. So when you move out to the outside, this is your centrifugal oil filter on the outside, and this is your timing cover. Again, this is extra, but you can see there's one little notch right here that's going to line up with this mark here, and that's the only one on it. When you look all the way around, there's no other timing mark beside this one. And the way that these holes are lined up is it only fits on the cover one way. So those are your bigger timing marks. This is part of your initial timing. But this with the chain is really what gets you in trouble, because you could have all these lined up right, but if you don't have this mark with this, then you're kind of dead in the water and you have to backtrack quite a ways. So make sure you look for these marks if you're doing a rebuild, or if you don't know anything about the engine. You can always take off this cover and look underneath to see where these line up. So let's get y'all into the car. Alright, so I'm going to freehand you guys a little bit to get you down in there to show you the timing marks. I marked them with a white paint pen. That way you guys can see better in the camera compared to like what I show you on the bench. They're going to be the same marks that I showed you on the bench, but they're just going to be in the car. So I have, let's be down in here so you can see the white marks on there. You can see the little tab. Let's see if I can zoom you guys in on that. There you go. So you see the white mark there, and then the white mark on the case. You want to make sure those two are at the are matched up. The manual says that the mark on the cover needs to be slightly behind, because remember, we're turning counterclockwise, so it's going to rotate that direction, unlike most motors where they go clockwise, which is that way. So the other thing you need to look for is, to make sure that that's all right, is if you look down cylinder 1, I took out the spark plug. I think the light's going to wash you guys out. I don't think it's going to work. You just have to take my word for it, but the piston is at the top of the cylinder there, and you want to make sure you're on a compression stroke, which means that if you put your finger over the hole, you should feel some pressure on your finger of the air trying to escape around it. And that's how you know you're on a compression stroke. Or you can always make sure under the number 1 intake and exhaust valves that they are closed. As it's coming up to fire, you want to make sure those are both closed. So those are your main timing marks on the outside. And as you can see, I completely took out our distributor out of the housing here. So let me get you guys on the tripod to get you a better angle from this side, and we'll set that all together. Alright, so we're going to be focusing right here where this hole is to put our distributor in. Now there's two kind of caps that you can have for your car. I have the one where they all come straight out the top, just like that, and some have where they come out the side, and that kind of dictates exactly where it's going to sit. But luckily for us, with the straight up kind, we have the flexibility to kind of place it wherever we want. Now, one thing that I would strongly consider is we have our condenser hanging down here. And so you want to make sure it's on the outside. That way, it's not, if it's on the inside, you'll be hitting the valve cover here. You'll be hitting all this when you're trying to adjust your timing. So it's probably better just to have it on the outside or facing straight back on the car. And since we know that we are at top dead center on the compression stroke, we're going to go to our cap, plug all these, and we're going to look for the number 1 on our cap. So number 1 is going to be here on the bottom left. Just got a 1 there, and then 2, and then this one's number 4, number 3, and this is where our coil comes in. So this one's also got a key on it, so it only goes on one way because it'll go around the where the points come out. See this little spot right here is where it's going to line up. So what we want to do is, if we want this to be on the outside, we want our rotor, this top part, to be facing the number 1 coil, which is here on this corner, and it's got that 1. So when I put it in here, I'm conscious of our key, which sits like this. So this is how our cap sits. Number 1 is right here. So that means when I go to place this in, I need to make sure that the rotor is facing right about number 1 generally. And I happen to mark it on my distributor here in little Sharpie marks. And that's where number 1 is. So then go to place it in. Should seat all the way. Put our cap on to check. Number 1 is this shaft right here. Make sure all of our stuff is out of the way. See, so I've already run into an issue where my locking clasp, which holds the distributor cap on, is hitting the oil fill. So what I need to do is take it out and adjust it some more. That way I have room to work. I don't want to back myself into a corner when I don't really have to. Alright. You don't want to force it, just let it fall in. So I've got it keyed up. This is exactly how it will sit. Nice and flush all the way around. You don't want any unevenness because that's how you break your rotor. So we've got it in there keyed. We're coming down to this point here. And it's right on this corner here, number 1. So I'm pretty close. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my retainer on there. This little piece like this. It's a 13mm nut. I'm going to place it on there just to lightly hold it. That way as we're working we don't bump it. We're just going to get it on there just a little snug. That way it doesn't just flop all around all over the place. That's all it needs, just so it doesn't really move around on us. That's just for right now until we get a little bit better testing. So what I'm going to do now is I've got the ground coil coming, grounded side from the coil that's going to attach here. And mine happens to have a 7mm nut on there, which is really tiny. But that's what's on it, so I'm not going to bother replacing the nut and all that. Put this on here real quick. I just happen to have a 7mm wrench. Make sure it's all in there. And this is how we're going to get power to the coil here. So what we're going to be doing next is we're going to take a test light and we're going to see right to the point when the points want to open. And when they open, the light should come on when we have the key on. And that is the exact moment when the points open, which is right where we need it to fire as it's coming on to number 1 on our distributor cap. So it's on there. Nice and tight, don't want anything moving around. So I am getting the test light, which is right behind you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ground it like this, and I'm going to be having it touch the back of the point, because as soon as the signal is interrupted, we should get power to here as we mess with the cap. And we might need to loosen that nut a little bit. So let me get the key on. Well, hold on, let me get that nut first, because I don't want the power to be going through those points constantly. So I just have it very loose so you have some room to work. That's better. So I'm going to have it right here where the points are open right there. I have power on. So when I come over here, just double check it, make sure we're good. Yes, yes. Alright. So I touch the back of the point. I'll get a smaller one so you guys can see it. But you see the light comes on, which means that as soon as it goes to close, see the light goes off. We're looking for just that moment right there. It's going to be right about there, and we're just going to tie that down and turn off the power. So, let me grab another set of points and I'll show you. So when you have this side grounded, you're interrupting the points. So, what I'm touching when I'm testing that is the back side of the point. That part that moves, I'm touching the back side of that. And that's how I'm determining, because as soon as it barely opens like that is where we're going to want it to fire, or get close to firing. And that way we know we're in the general ballpark of where we need to have our timing. So let me cinch this down, put the cap back on, get the wires back on, put that spark plug back in, and then we'll do a quick test. So give me just a second. Alright, so I've got the distributor cap on. All the wires, you double check where they're going. Make sure you double check your cap. Make sure you follow the wires all the way to the plug. Make sure they're all the way seated to the plug. Make sure all your connections are nice and tight. And then you are all set. So when you want to set your time, you should be able to get the car to start over, to turn over. And it should fire relatively quickly as long as you are within this general setting. It might take some tweaking where you have to adjust it, advance it, or retard it a little bit. But just remember, we're turning counterclockwise, so it's going to come around like this. Like this. So just make sure that you have it going the right way. If you still can't get it to start, just start from the beginning. Be patient. It's going to take some time. It's not something you can necessarily do on the first try every time. These are very delicate when it comes to timing, and they're very selective at the time they want to go. So let's wrap it up here. Alright everybody, just like that, that is how you set the timing on your 68, well my 68 850 Spider. They're usually about the same when it comes to different years, but this is a really good place to get yourself started when you're trying to do a first start or after a rebuild like myself. I'm still waiting on some parts, that's why I can't really fire it up this very second. But that is the general area of where you want it all set with. So like I said, if you cannot get it to start after doing these steps, take a second and try again. Now remember, on a compression stroke you can put your finger over that plug and you should be able to feel the pressure build up against your finger. Other than that, that's really all it takes. Just make sure you guys subscribe, follow, like. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below and I'll do my best to help you out. Other than that, thanks guys, and we'll see you to the next episode.